UFC 272 this Saturday, March 5th in Las Vegas, Nevada brings some amazing fights. Let's start with the first and obvious, the main event. Jorge Gamebred Masvidal versus Colby the Chaos Covington. I have to give the props to the UFC because this fight, it's a no-brainer. It's an amazing story and it's an amazing fight, amazing styles of matchups of two highly skilled fighters. Top 5 fighters in the division. And why do I have to give props to the UFC? Because they love stories and people love stories. Two former teammates, two former best friends had a falling out. They worked out in the same gym. Falling out in the gym. One guy switched the gyms. It's so much to the story. And this is why MMA, especially the UFC, is getting more popular than the boxing. Because the only stories in boxing we've seen recently is just like, oh, okay, we have one undefeated boxer that we groomed to be a superstar. Now we have another undefeated boxer that is also a superstar. We're going to match them. That's the basically story that's been in the boxing world lately. But in the UFC, you see former teammates, former friends, former sparring partners, former people who both had the same coaches. That's the story that is amazing. And let's look into this fight, because this fight is not only worth watching, but this fight worth analyzing. So we have, first of all, let's start with the story of the guys. They spar together and they train together. A lot of people give it a lot of weight, even though it's been way back, they haven't sparred and trained together for the last 3 years. That's a long time. And in the sparring, it's a training. You don't go full out. You don't utilize reflexes and certain aspects of the fighting that you can do only in the actual fight. So people should not only depend oh my God, Jorge was always better in sparring sessions. You must also not forget that Jorge was already very experienced when Colby was coming up, So there is that thing. And I think Kamaru Usman said it the best. Jorge will find out that it's much harder to strike with Colby than he thought to. And Colby will find out that it's much harder to take down Masvidal than he thought to. And this is, I think, where the fight is going to be very crucial. Who's gonna utilize their best practices and their best weapon? Can Colby take down Masvidal? Let's answer that. I think he can very easily. And you know why? Because he managed to take down Usman. And not only that, after he switched the gyms, and no shame on American top team, but the MMA Masters made out of Colby a pure work of art. He improved so much in those last few years. So much. Which is usually hard for someone who's been established in the game for a long time to improve that much. The last time I've seen such an improvement was Kamaru Usman when he switched to Trevor Whitman and he started knocking out everybody, So-called wrestler and crotch sniffer started knocking out everybody. So Colby is doing very great changes and he has very good coaches around him. So they put a lot of pressure on him and they also can meld him in a much better way, shape or form. Masvidal, on the other hand, I think his takedown defense is solid and top-notch. Kamaru Usman struggled to take down Masvidal, and that says a lot. However, I think that Colby's striking is a little bit worse than Masvidal, of course. Colby is not knocking out people, and Masvidal is. However, Masvidal is only knocking out people in the first 1 or 2 rounds. And you know how it goes. The more you fight, the more oxygen you lose, And it's hard to knock out someone when you start breathing hard through your mouth and starting losing that oxygen in your muscles, Then you just become, all of a sudden your hands of stone turns into hands of pillows. So this fight, that's why I like this fight. It's pretty intriguing. Also, we have to notice that none of the fighters can fight off their back foot. They both are very good when they either put under the pressure or can stay in the middle of the octagon. Great example, Colby Covington is a pressure fighter. Once he starts fighting on the back foot against Kamaru Usman, he started falling apart. He started feeling that pressure. Jorge Masvidal said he started feeling that stress, oh, what do I do? And that's a very valid point. But the same thing happens to Jorge Masvidal. He fights best when he's in the middle or has that slight pressure, so he can time his shots. But man, this fight doesn't need any description or anything. This is just, I wish this fight, there'll be a press conference after each round, so we can just hear them just go at each other, and they legitimately hate each other. That's why this fight is one of the best fights. However, hating each other, I think, is much bigger benefit for Colby, because he can manage his emotions much better than Masvidal. And now imagine what if happens this scenario. Masvidal hates Colby so much, but he notices in the first 2 rounds that, for example, he starts losing striking exchanges, or he's not winning as easily as he wished to. What if that he started feeling that, oh my God, I hate this guy, but he's beating me up. That can literally break him. And Masvidal had some of those occasions, because the people called him journeyman, but he reinvented his career, reinvented himself. But he's done a pretty good job so far. So what they can do, I think Colby has a very good advantage because he's improved his striking a lot, and he still has a very solid wrestling, and his cardio is very good. Jorge Masvidal struggled with the cardio a little bit, but he's a very solid striker. So you cannot count neither of the fighters out. I think Colby Covington is going to win. Even though, oh my God, let's talk about the trash talk first, because the trash talk of Colby Covington kind of sometimes overshadows his skill. His skill set is very good, but people just pay attention to his mouth and what he says. I mean, fair enough, some of the quotes are just amazing. When he called Usman CEO of the EPO, that's next level. I mean, though, when he called Masvidal 2-pump chump, because all he does is just do 2-pump combos. That was pretty good. But I think the skill set is in an advantage of Colby Covington, and I think he's going to win. It's going to be either submission or a ground and pound in the late rounds by Colby, or he's going to win the decision, because they will eventually just gas each other out and no one can finish each other fully. People can say oh, but he never fought a heavy striker like Masvidal and he can get knocked out. That's not true. I mean, Kamaru Usman became a very heavy striker, and Colby Covington fared pretty well with him, On the other hand, Kamaru Usman knocked out Masvidal out cold. Colby Covington doesn't have the knockout power, but Colby Covington can take a punch. And for example, he put a huge pressure on Robbie Lawler, and Robbie Lawler is a beast. No matter what age, no matter what cage, or if you meet him on the street, he's still a beast. So I think that Colby has more advantages coming to this fight, and I think he's going to win. The only way Masvidal can win is by some crazy knockout that can happen in a second round, third round, best. But man, I wish this fight could get a rematch. I wish it will end in some way that it's not the end of the story, because there is so much drama between these two guys, so much hatred, and so much real emotion. So I really hope they will just keep running at each other, and I really hope they will just keep fighting each other. So let me know, who do you think guys will win in the comments below, and I will see you next one.